So, Sharon, let me get this straight. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you probably have the front and the back of the business card all covered up with the title and all of the responsibilities. So I looked this up, and tell me if I'm wrong. Executive Director, FIFA World Cup 2026, Toronto Secretariat, City of Toronto. Is all four columns, is that square?
That is correct. Yes.
So with the history that you have with big ticket items and large events there in the GTA, I mean, we're talking FIFA U20, we're talking Special Olympics, COC, Skate Canada. What attracted you to this particular job at this particular point of your career?
Yeah, you've done your homework. Well, I've come into this role from Special Olympics, as you mentioned, where I had been for 16 years, the last 10 as the CEO of Special Olympics Canada, and loved my work there, loved the organization. I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Special Olympics, but I was ready for a change. I was ready for a new challenge. Felt like I maybe had another leap in me. And the opportunity, I had worked on the U20s that were in Canada in 2007. I was the general manager for the Toronto site. And I thought, you know what? We've got a World Cup coming. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to be part of this event, to be part of bringing this amazing global event to our city, and decided to throw my hat in the ring. And here we are.
18 years later, how different is it planning for a World Cup as it was planning for the U20s for FIFA back in 07?
Well, interestingly enough, our first site visits at the stadium back in 2007, we were wearing hard hats and boots because it was under construction. And so here we are doing a capital project to prepare for the World Cup all these years later. But a World Cup, there's no question. I mean, a World Cup is on a completely different level. The U20s were an amazing event. We had all kinds of records in that event, from, sales and those types of things across Canada. It was amazing to be part of that, which is what sort of drew me to be part of the World Cup. But, there's no question it's on a completely different scale.
How many different, I guess, venues are in play here, whether we're talking BMO for the actual soccer, the practice facilities, housing athletes, housing all the support personnel, all of the ancillary things that you're talking about, the game day events? How many different venues are you and the staff there having to coordinate to make sure that everything is going on a daily basis the way that it should during this month that is going to bring the world to Toronto?
Yeah, some of the things you've mentioned there in terms of locations are actually responsibility of FIFA. So host city, aren't sort of linked to them directly. So as a host city, we are, of course, responsible for getting the stadium ready. And in this case, probably mid-May, we will literally sort of hand the keys of the stadium over to FIFA, who will then take over the operations. We have, as you mentioned, we have a training site, which in the case of Toronto, we needed to build one new pitch and the field house and amenities that go with that pitch. And we chose to have our training site at a large urban park in Toronto that we're very proud of, because that training site will be one of our legacy items post-tournament and is part of a 10-year master plan of redevelopment. So we're excited that we could tie that into a priority of the city that already existed, and we'll support that. And then we'll be hosting our FIFA Fan Festival in a location, it's called Fort York and the Bentway, in sort of the downtown core of Toronto, a short walk from the stadium, actually. So those are the main ones we're managing as a host city. And then things like team hotels and and FIFA guests and others coming from FIFA are managed by FIFA themselves.
All right. So I know that you probably have somewhere in your office, you've got the 4 foot by 6 foot, probably wrapped around 2 walls, the dry erase board that's got all of the different things and the arrows and all the different colored markers and all this kind of stuff when it comes to to-do lists. Might be on a Google Doc, might be on LegalPad, kind of like what I still do these days. Where is that to-do list, and how are you in the process? You mentioned a couple of dates with BMO and such, but where are you on the road of crossing off everything on this list, getting ready for something that is only 7-8 months away?
Yeah, that countdown clock is ticking away. There's no question about it. And myself and the team and those partners and stakeholders working with us are certainly feeling that. Lots to do. Not going to lie. We've got, as with any big event, there's always, the stuff that comes at the end. But we've also accomplished a lot. We've really, I think I'm really proud of some of the promotional things we've done. We had an excellent 1 year to go celebration here in Toronto. A public event that was very well attended, people showing up with their favorite jerseys on, celebrating all things football, which really kind of, was heartening for us to know the type of support we're going to see in Toronto and the energy and excitement around having this event in our city. In terms of like big items, I think that the two kind of key, well, there's probably more than two, but a couple of the key ones that come to mind for sure is we are doing a capital project at the stadium. To meet FIFA requirements, we actually have to increase the capacity, the seating capacity. The stadium currently holds about 28,000, and we need to be at a minimum of 45,000 as a host city for a World Cup. So we are adding temporary seating to our stadium to get us up to that capacity. And we're doing a host of other upgrades and things at the stadium that, again, will be legacy items that will improve fan experience post-tournament. So we are complete with phase one of that capital project and just launching phase two, which is really steel starting to rise for the structures for the temporary seating. So that's been a massive project that really is one of the things that kind of had to start day one because we needed the runway to finish that project off. The second big item for us here in Toronto, and you may have heard about it on the news, is our traffic. We have, crazy traffic and transportation congestion here in Toronto. And so early on, we brought on a transportation consultant to support us. And we have a very strong table of transportation experts, including here at the city, the consultant that I spoke of, some provincial transportation providers, et cetera, so that all the players are around the table. And so our transportation and mobility strategy is something that's been in the works for a long time too. One of the first things we started. And then big elements coming up are Fan Festival. We really want to have an amazing fan festival for residents here in Toronto, but also people visiting from outside. Really want it to be a central place of celebration and fun and safe and secure and all those good things that an event should be. And so there's a lot of work to still be done on that element as well.
Okay, so you mentioned transportation. That's something that here in our base in Atlanta is something that has to be tackled as well. But the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure, at least in public transportation, is in place where you can hop on the elevated trains, the MARTA train, as it's called here, the rapid transit, and you can go from northern suburbs. You can come from the airport, go straight into downtown. You can go from east to west and come into downtown, where it's hubbed right there in the middle. For those that don't know what TTC can do and where it is when it comes to the integration, I'll get to the QEW and the traffic there in a second. But when it comes to TTC itself, where does it fall in the plan to make sure that everyone can get from point A to point B and get to Fan Fests, get to the Fort, get to BMO? Where does TTC work in all of this?
Yeah, so the TTC in Toronto, and it's Toronto Transit Commission, is where TTC comes from. So that, their fleet of vehicles include underground subway, includes above ground buses, as well as streetcars. So there's a whole circuit and a number of different routes that come from various points and directions across the city, north, south, east, west. And so we are working very closely with the TTC to both manage volume capacity. We're changing a couple of platforms near the stadium so that we can increase sort of access to the streetcar in one area that's kind of a critical point. We want to be able to not just have a stop point that can accommodate maybe a couple of streetcars, but one that can accommodate 4 or 5. So we're revising one of the platforms for the streetcar. And then similar to how you've described, John, we have a commuter train coming from suburbs, both east and west of Toronto, called the GO train. That really is our commuter train coming into the city. And so Metrolinx, which is the provincial transportation organization, manages the GO. So they're at this table as well in terms of planning and execution. And then we also have a train service called the UP, above rail or above ground rail, that comes from the airport to and from the airport right into downtown. So there's a number of players, as I mentioned, at this planning table that all are managing capacity. And one of the interesting things that we're, I guess sort of the next big kind of nugget of information we need to refine and continue to build our transportation plan are the match times, which of course we'll be getting coming out of the draw that happens on December 5th.
You mentioned GO, you mentioned Metro, you mentioned TTC, and I mean, this is something that is going to be an impact for the entire Golden Horseshoe. I mean, this is literally from everybody. The second you cross the Peace Bridge, you're at Niagara Falls, you're making that big sweep, you're coming through Hamilton, you're coming into the GTA. This is something that is going to be impacting this entire region. Has there been any numbers come out about how many folks you're anticipating during this month, whether they're there to watch matches or not, economic impact? What are any of those numbers come to the fore for projections yet?
Yeah, the expectation is around, and these are probably need to be sort of updated, and I'm sure will be after the draw is done and we know what countries are going to be competing in Toronto. But sort of older, I guess, or previous estimations have us seeing about 300,000 visitors coming into the city. And of course, that doesn't include residents who, as you've mentioned, would be coming in from, various places in and around the Golden Horseshoe. So it's a, significant increase to volume. We also know there's going to be other events happening. Toronto's a big city. There's lots going on. There's other things happening during this time period. So we're working with a lot of other partners around the other events, concurrent events that will be taking place, how we manage those from, do any times need to shift? If it's a smaller event or even a larger one, can we, shift location a little bit to stay away from the key hubs that will be extremely busy for World Cup? So there's a lot of integrated planning going on with, not just transportation, but with other, event providers in the city as well.
How many different folks, when you are at this table with all the stakeholders, how rectangular is this table? How I mean, are you at are you at the Coliseum? It's like you got to tell the Marlies. It's like, no, look, we need the space here. We need the space with all of these stakeholders to hang on to this meeting. Push your match back a little bit. How many folks are we talking about at this long rectangular table where you're sitting there and having to coordinate all these different folks and agencies and shareholders and stakeholders? How many folks are we talking that you have to integrate here?
Yeah, good question, John. I actually don't know the exact number, but I can tell you it's very extensive and comprehensive and complicated, right? Like you've just hit it. This is a complicated, a complicated structure and a model on a big event of this size and scope. And one of the things that's a key part of my role is to make sure that we bring the right people to the table, and that we're all sort of aligned and going in the same direction. So we have a number of small sort of working groups, right? There's a working group focused on transportation, a group focused on marketing communications, a group focused on revenue generation, a team that's focused on the capital project at the stadium, a team that's focused on fan festival. So, and bringing all the right players to those individual smaller teams. And then we meet sort of as overall operations with the key leads from those groups regularly to bring all the folks in so that there is this bigger picture lens that, those smaller groups who have a very specific task and focus know that they're part of a bigger picture, and whatever they're planning needs to tie with the next group and the next group. So it's sort of integrating all those sort of very focused plans into one larger plan that sees the event as a whole be a success.
How daunting a task is it with all of these subcommittees and subgroups and rectangular tables that go through the horizon and start at the start at Skydo and work their way to the Air Canada Center and the post office here? I mean, how many different subcommittees are we talking here?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, our organizational chart is extensive, and our model here in Toronto, which may be different. Your listeners might be hearing different models from different cities. The secretariat group specifically, is quite small that we have here at Toronto, but the model is very much one where we're tapping into the expertise of people either within the city or externally to the city. So, the core secretariat team is part of facilitating, bringing in the experts from transportation, from waste management, from legal, from marketing and communications, and on and on. And so we're tapping into expertise that already exists here at the city. And this has really been identified as, senior leaders at the city as obviously a priority. It's a big investment from a financial perspective. And so it's been, it's Team Toronto. We might be a secretariat kind of leading the delivery, or leading the charge on the planning, but the delivery model is one that is truly a Team Toronto approach.
How much capital investment are we talking here, whether it is the expansion of BMO by 50%, roads, infrastructure, the TTC that we were talking about? Any clue as to published figures as to how much capital investment has been made by the Ontario government, City of Toronto, all these different stakeholders to make sure that this is going the way that they want it to go?
Yeah, our investment at the stadium is about 125 million, and then we've got investment at Centennial Park, as I mentioned, for the training site as well, of about another 20-25. So, we're in the range of 150 to 160 on capital projects for stadium and training site. And then, there's been some of that investment, as part of other city plans in some of these other areas. So if there was a plan to, upgrade one of the streets and TTC locations at one area, that has been built into some of the city planning as preparation. And again, that sort of Team Toronto approach for the tournament.
What has been the most pleasant surprise about this process to this point, where we're 8 months away from action actually happening at BMO? Has there been something that you sat there, it was almost like a eureka moment of like, oh, wow, that's really cool? What's been the most pleasant surprise of this process?
Yeah, one that I'm really, thanks for asking that. It's good to talk about some of the great things happening and the things we're proud of. But one of the interesting things that's recently happened is, of course, we're going to be, tapping into amazing volunteers, as any major event does. And I'm sure all of the host cities, I think all of the host cities are, and we certainly are here in Toronto as well. And volunteer registration is online. FIFA are very engaged in that. They've created a really interesting sort of brand for the volunteer program, and have really, been supportive in creating an on-site online training, all of those things. So I think registration opened at the end of August. And of course, we promoted that across all of our social channels and other places here in Toronto. And then I think it closed early October. And we had over 248,000 people register to volunteer. And yes, you heard right, almost 250,000 people. And that was pretty extraordinary. Like when you're kind of thinking, oh, we don't have a massive marketing budget here in the city for this event. And sometimes there's comments about, are you guys really getting the word out? And we don't see a lot of stuff and all these kinds of things. Well, 250,000 people took the time to register online and are willing to give of their time and talents. And they're excited enough to give up time and talents to be part of this event. So somewhere somebody's knowing something about it. So that was a real win for us. And I think we all sat back and went, wow, this is super cool. Like for me, having been involved in sport my entire career, it was a real, I guess, moment where you sort of go, hey, that's part of our Canadian culture. It's part of our culture that we volunteer and we step up and we get engaged in community and we want to be part of these big events. And, sport in Canada does not happen without volunteers. And we were the highest registration number of volunteers out of the 16 host cities. And interestingly enough, Vancouver was second. And so to me, that does really speak to a Canadian culture of volunteerism, of supporting sport, of wanting to get involved and be part of these big events in our communities. So that's a really exciting one that we're really proud of. And I think is a bit of an indicator of some other things, that just the interest, bottom line, the interest in this event.
And what I'd like to do is put a bookmark right there in our discussion, because we want to come back and visit one more time as we turn the calendar and get a lot closer to the games actually happening. We want to come back, do a bit of a check-in, see how you're doing, see if you need any cold compresses or anything, or if you need to, if anybody needs like the Theraguns or anything because of typing and being hunched over, things like that. We'd love to come back and touch base and find out how things are progressing as we get closer and closer to the World Cup on the 26th side of the calendar. I can't thank you enough for being this open and honest about the process. Look forward to asking more questions, finding out more things, and getting ready for a 26. Thanks for dropping by the morning show.
Happy to share, John. Look forward to talking to you again.